Welcome into UGA Football Live with JC Shelton, where the dogs come to talk. Hey guys, welcome in UGA Football Live with JC Shelton. We are week two show here. Georgia's coming off a win over UT Martin at home. A little bit of a slow start, offensively especially, but you know that defense really held the entire game, flying around to the ball. The offense got into its rhythm there late in the second quarter into the second half. We're going to get more of that game review and a little pregame review for Ball State this week on our live show with Arthur Lynch on Thursdays at 8. But for this week, I wanted to have on one of the best Georgia tight ends and to really kind of give us a little deep dive into Brock Bowers, what he sees from him, and talk about a few funny stories that I heard from none other than Orson Charles, former Georgia All-American, man. One of the most athletic tight ends in Georgia history. That's what stands out to me. Orson, it's been a while since we had you on. It's the first time we've had you on the YouTube channel. How you been, man? Let Dog Nation how you've been.
I've been good. I've been good. And first of all, thank you for having me on, JC. I'm excited to talk about the dogs. I'm excited to be a part of what you and Arthur is creating. So definitely thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. And Artie he speaks very highly of you. Obviously, you guys, played together, and you were the guy when he came in as a recruit. So he got to sit behind you and watch you work. And I threw it out to him this week, and I was like, "What's something that I should ask Orson about?" And we might have talked about it briefly on the show before, but you got to tell us a little bit more in depth here, man. I got to know more about this. About you breaking the Florida National Championship trophy. Tell me about that. It was on a recruiting visit, right? Tell me about that, man. How'd that happen? How'd you do that to the Florida Gators?
Look, so I want to first say that I was completely an accident. I did not mean to do it. I was a curious little kid, the first time seeing it. So I'll give you the rundown. So we go on a trip. It was Aaron and I. Aaron didn't come until later on, but I went with my high school coach, my head coach, and my receiver coach. So we go watch practice, go sit in a couple of classrooms, try to get the feel for it. So as I'm waiting for Urban to come back from practice, they set up this whole lunch buffet in the swamp. So I'm like, oh man, this is everything I've been watching. So while we're eating, on the other side of the table is these trophies. So a Tim Tebow Heisman Trophy and it's a national championship trophy. And there's a space in between. So I'm like, okay, I'm a tourist. Like this is something that's new to me. So I wanted to go over there and take a picture for memory. Like, hey, y'all got it. When I get here, Aaron and I we'll do the same thing. So I take a picture of the Heisman Trophy of Tim, and then I turn around and take a picture of the national championship trophy. But then I was like, oh no, I want to go down and take a picture of Tim Tebow's name. So I turned back around and kind of squatted down to go down and take it. And all of a sudden, I saw the ball because the ball was on three palms. I saw the ball hit the table and hit the floor and shattered. And when I tell you, I was so nervous and scared at the same time because I was like, look, I don't have the money to pay for this. And you could hear a pin drop in the swamp. Like nobody said nothing. And we just all looked around until somebody broke it out. It's like, hey, Orson, you're okay. And just that in the third. So one of the funniest moments, but definitely one of the scariest moments as well.
Did you tell somebody? Did it when it happened? You were like, all right, who do I tell first? Or they just
look? I was so scared to say anything because I didn't want them to come sue me. I didn't want them to like force me to come to Florida. So I really just kept my mouth shut. And then the only person I really knew was my high school coach and my receiver coach until they broke the story. And then everybody, was laughing about it.
Oh my goodness. How did your recruiting go at Florida after that? Was it a little awkward for you?
Yeah, so it was definitely awkward. I didn't go back. And then on signing day, when I said I'm going to Georgia, I had to call Urban. And he was like, well, he said some other stuff that I'd rather not say. And he was like, well, good luck. We're going to beat you every year. So the rival started right there.
Oh my goodness. That sounds like, watching Urban's escapades lately and then the Swamp Kings documentary. I don't know if you got a chance to watch that. I mean, he's an interesting guy. So I bet there was some things said, it feels like from Urban Meyer, man.
Yes, by far, by far. I'll spare you the details. I'll spare you the details.
I mean, we'd like to hear him, but I'm not going to push you. I'm not going to push you. Yeah, all right, here's another one. Here's another one from Artie. So he told me to bring up Coach Casse during the 2011 offseason and winter workouts with sweatsuits. I have no idea what that's about. You got to enlighten us.
So Coach Casey and Coach T, like they're old school. Like you're gonna go in there, you're gonna do full body, you're gonna throw 400, 500 pounds on a plate, on the bar, and you're gonna lift the gym, and then we're gonna go outside and he's gonna run us like we're doing a triathlon. Like, and then the sweats did not make it any better. Like, try and imagine you maxing out with full body top and upper sweats. And they're expecting the same rep every time. And then even when we're going outside to run, we have to keep the sweats on. It was horrible. Like, we did not understand why we was doing it. We did not understand why we couldn't take the sweats off. But you knew that you wanted to keep it on if you wanted to play, because if you took it off, you'll stand out on the team and obviously you'll get cut. But it was crazy. I still don't understand why we did it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, and of course, Coach Casey. I don't know why I pronounced it Casse. I mean, that's a good take on it, though. It's a cool name. But assistant strength and conditioning coach there at Georgia. It's a very old school way of doing things too. Because I read a while back there was a study on it about the wearing of sweatsuits as you work out, and it does nothing for you. I mean, yeah, you sweat. I mean, you're losing electrolytes and stuff, but
Uh,
that's about it. That's such an old style coaching there. And then here's another one, the last one for Artie. We'll get into more Georgia stuff. But he asked me to ask you about UGA grounds crew watering the grass before spring scrimmage on Saturday morning.
oh, I gotta text him after the show. That's a good one. So every time we had a Saturday practice, it would be in the morning, and I will always ask like, "Hey, I hope they don't water the grass," because as a receiver, as a tight end, like we need our footing, we need to get off, and then if the ball drops, you got to dry it. It slows everything down. So everybody was like, "Hey, nobody's watering the grass," and I'm like, "Hey, well, why is it always wet every time I go outside?" And it was like, "Orson, that's mildew. Like, what are you talking about?" So that was one of the biggest running jokes in the tight end room, and I can't remember that he remembered that. That's funny. That's
Wow, so they just got you for not knowing that the dew comes every morning on the grass. You thought somebody was out there watering that stuff just to mess with you.
yes, I definitely thought that. I definitely thought that. Oh, I got it. That was a good one.
That's good. That honestly, I mean, if you're preparing for a rain game, I mean that might be a way to do it, man. Water the grass up on top of the dew. Like we gotta play a rain game this week. Let's do it. Let's get prepared.
Uh-huh.
I like it, man. Good
uh,
stuff. Good stuff. Let's jump into this. I was thinking about this call and kind of how you played the position. It was kind of almost you're a little early for your time, right? Because you look at how the tight end position has evolved throughout all levels of football, really. Even when let's bring it back to when you're playing days there. I mean, the most athletic tight ends I feel like were in the league at that point. You had your Antonio Gates and Gonzalez there. They were still bigger guys, but they played more of a receiver at times and great hands, great breaks off the ball, route running. And then, fast forward to today, and you have Kyle Pitts at the NFL draft record a few years ago from Florida. Going I think fourth no overall. Bowers has a chance, if he decides to leave Georgia this year to kind of be that next really tight end guy that goes really, really early in the draft and maybe set a record there depending on where he goes. And just the position he plays, a smaller guy, especially compared to you. Very, very quick, can run the ball. He's a running back in high school. He played a little bit of everything in high school, but the way he runs the ball as well, George, that was his first touchdown of the year. George's first touchdown of the year was that Bowers end around handoff at the goal line this past week. And that just really stood out to me. And I just wanted to get your thoughts on that and how the tight end position has changed. I know you played in the league for a long time as well. Did you see that transition kind of happen when you got to the NFL where they were trying to play their tight ends a little bit differently, other than, your typical 260-pound inline blocker, catch a few passes here and there?
yes, of course. So one of the main things that we always said is NFL is a copycat league. So once KC started using the tight end more, once Atlanta or whoever was really using the tight end, everybody's going to want to copy that offense and really duplicate it. So when I got in and played tight end at UGA, it was Aaron Hernandez, it was Ingram at Florida. Like these was athletic tight ends, and I really wanted to mimic my game after them. And then we had Ben Watson that I really like respected and admired how he played the game on and off the field. So as I was going through that transition, I was like, you know what? How can I set myself apart? So it was like, all right, well, if I know that I'm faster than some DBs and linebackers, then that's going to set myself apart. So that's why I transitioned from receiver to tight end when I went to Georgia, and then everybody kind of started to pick up. So I definitely believe if it wasn't for Aaron, if it wasn't for Ben, if it wasn't for me, then there wouldn't be no Brock because they wouldn't know how to use the tight end. And I believe the tight end position is it's the best position on the field because it's a mismatch. Like you can't have a linebacker cover, nor can you have a DB because we're stronger and you bring a safety, then the receiver's going to beat the corner every time. So I
Yeah.
love how they're using the tight end at Georgia and definitely in the league as well.
Yeah, no, I think you bring up a good point. It is one of the most important positions on the field, especially for the offense. Minus the quarterback, just 'cause the middle of the field is so important, right? As a tight end, you're right there, being able to take advantage of that, and like you said, a mismatch, and that's what Brock Bowers is, and he's been doing it. The level he's been playing since he's a true freshman, so people have been able to key on him, and still he does what he does. It doesn't really matter, they double him, it doesn't matter. And I think
uh,
I think Georgia does a really good job of moving him around, get him in shifts, get him in those mismatches pre-play, and I think that really leads to what he's able to do and getting the ball to him as a running back too, especially with the depth kind of concerns we have there right now. I think it's really awesome to watch. You talked about the guys you kind of modeled your game off of from the tight end position. How much did Mike Bobo kind of help transition you from that receiver to tight end position? Was there any work with him there? How do you think that you guys tried to get the maximum out of you in that offense under Bobo when he was at Georgia at first?
So I will have to give that credit to Coach John Lilly. Like tremendous coach. He wasn't that rah rah kind of guy, but he was like, "Hey, oh, this is what you're supposed to do." He'll always quiz me every time we'll walk around Busmere to make sure that I knew what the game plan was. And then in at the end of the day, that gave Bobo the confidence to be like, you know what, Orson knows what he's doing. We can feed him the ball. He's beating his guy consistently in practice. But it started with the classroom with Coach Lilly. I have to give him all the credit, like just all the plays that we were getting thrown at. He was making sure that I knew what I was supposed to do, knew where I was supposed to be, and then just apply it on game day in practice.
Yeah. No, I think it makes sense. It's very important. I think the tight end coaches kind of get overlooked, right? Because you have the bigger name guys like your running back coaches, your receiver coaches, and of course your offensive coordinator. But even looking back to John Lilly and how successful he's been, he's in the NFL right now. I think he's coaching for the Panthers, if I'm not
He is.
mistaken.
He
Um,
is.
and then Todd Hartley right now is another one of those guys that Kirby Smart speaks so highly of,
Mm-hmm.
as a guy in that room and helping Brock Bowers and Darnell Washington last year, his growth, the way he came in so raw, and now he's playing well for the Pittsburgh Steelers, at least in the preseason. We'll get to see him later in the season and see how he develops more. But I think it's really important to have those guys, and it makes sense that he was able to teach you so well, and you played, out of your mind. I feel like in that offense, where it wasn't as much of a spread opportunity. I like to see you right now in the kind of the spread offense and using your athletic ability too in this kind of offensive day that we're playing with. As far as the defensive guys you weren't up against at Georgia, just loaded. That's kind of Georgia's mantra. Always have those NFL guys. Now the success on the field, I feel like lately has been the top in Georgia history. But as far as having guys and raw talent there on defense, it's always been, man. What was one of those guys in defense you were going up against every day at Georgia practice that you think you maybe a little like iron sharpens iron, really, really tough guy to go against?
Cornelius Washington. Like he was so big, he was so long, he was so strong. And I always beat my guy jumping the snap and getting in them and then driving my feet. Every time I went against Cornelius, all he do was lock out, look at the ball carrier, and just go make the play. And I was like, you know what? That's going to get me stronger. I got to figure out how I'm going to do this. But Cornelius, by far, one of the hardest person I had to block when I was at Georgia. The Jarvis Jones had Gino. Like we had some great guys. It's kind of hard to really single out somebody, but
Mhm.
the first person that comes to my mind is Cornelius.
Yeah, he pop you one good time.
I wouldn't say pop me one good time. We had a good collision, and then afterwards, it was just two got me. But
This
yeah,
guys, man, just dudes on the
yeah.
defense, and they were so much bigger now too. And you talking about the mismatches. Even the New Days era, I feel like it's even more of a mismatch for the linebackers and DBs, especially in the SEC as they move to a smaller guys on the front seven.
Mm-hmm.
And Kirby Smart's even talked about that. When you look at the Alabama defense, we talked about it on the show a few times, but the Alabama defense where Kirby came from, and then transitioning to smaller guys, especially like in the middle and inside linebacker. You go from a guy like Dante Hightower, Alabama was like 6'5", 260 around there. And then now you have a guy like Roquan Smith a few years ago and Kobe Dean and Jamon Dumas Johnson now. They're like 6'1", 230, around that can really move. But I mean, you taking that height away kind of opens you up to get, mossed a little bit by a tight end in the middle. I feel like you got to be so physical at DB. I think that Georgia does a great job of that, obviously. But yeah, it's
Mm-hmm.
just interesting to think the evolution of the game there. Um, as far as here's the thing for Georgia too this year, we can get into it with you a little bit. That the schedule doesn't pop out at you as being really tough, right? I mean, you have a team like Tennessee who's playing well with the new quarterback who's a huge arm, Joe Milton. The defense I think looked improved last week, albeit a lesser opponent in Virginia. You have Ole Miss on the schedule this year, Kentucky, South Carolina a couple weeks, and they didn't look good. They allowed like 9 sacks to North Carolina. Um, but he's came out and said, the schedule can look like it wants to, but it's an SEC schedule and it's tough, no matter how you play. How do you describe that on going on a week to week best basis in the SEC? What makes those games so hard to you in your mind?
You play in the SEC, the toughest division. You get caught slipping, you're gonna lose. Then you out of the playoff. Who you gonna blame? The schedule? No. So the reason why Kirby said that is because you want to make sure that we don't beat ourselves. And the only way that the opponent beats us is if we beat ourselves. And I definitely believe the key to the season is making sure that we get everybody back healthy. We play assignment football, get adjusted to Coach Bobo, and just go out there and smack people in the mouth and play Georgia football.
Yeah, yeah. I love that Kirby's. We're not going to be hunted at the University of Georgia. I think,
Mm-hmm.
and I've heard working for the Players Lounge too this year more and hearing these guys and we host players and they do their thing, and have little shows here and there. They do interviews and stuff. And they always mention that quote from Kirby and how he approaches it, and they take pride in that and being aggressive and not being hunted on a week to week basis, no matter who you're playing. And you look at Missouri last year and that game that was so close, and Missouri had Georgia on the ropes in the fourth quarter. They were able to come back, and nobody was penciling that game in as a slip up for Georgia possibly. Nobody. You look on the roster on paper, you're like, this is going to be a 20-point win at the very least. And then it went down to the fourth quarter. I think that really speaks to how tough the ACC can be like that. So I think there would be it's out there. It's very common to think about this schedule in a way that's not as good as previous years and one of the easiest in the SEC. But I feel like there's always going to be that one or two games this year that's going to really challenge Georgia. And to have a slow start like they did last week, it might not be good for them when they come up to a better offense like Tennessee to go to Neyland Stadium this year. It's going to be a great matchup. What was one of your favorite SEC stadiums to play in other than Sanford? We know how great that is, but
One of my favorite, to be honest, I didn't like any of them. If I had to choose, I'm not going to forget the experience when we played Eric Berry at Tennessee. That stadium was rocking. He caught a pick off of AJ, and I could not hear for at least 5 minutes. And when they say that's probably one of the biggest stadiums, they really meant it. And I never forgot that experience. But if I had to choose one, I would say Tennessee.
man, take me into that too. Like when it's so loud in an environment like that, the communication has to be harder, right? I mean, what
Mm.
kind of steps did you guys take in preparation for that type of environment, if you can remember?
So we'll always do the silent. So we'll always do silent. So everybody will have to key the ball, and then we'll do signals. So as we're going fast paced offense, whether it was 2 minutes, we'll look at the sideline, and then the play caller will signal something, and we'll go on the ball and then hype.
Yeah. How important is the quarterback in that space right there. Obviously, with silent counts, a lot of keys. Are you kind of reading the quarterback? Is he sending out those signals more? Or are you looking at the sidelines?
So looking at the sideline, and if the quarterback wants something, he'll give you a separate signal based off of
Mm,
the coverage we see. But it's very
gotcha.
important. It's one of those things that we prepare all week. So when it comes time to the game, obviously you can't really mimic the game because like when we're in practice, they'll play loud music throughout the whole practice to make sure that we're adjusted to it. But at the end of the day, like, hey, we're all here to play ball. We all know what to do. Read your people that's giving you the play and go execute.
Yeah, and that's really challenging when you think about it too for a new offense. Albeit a lot of the verbiage hasn't changed from Todd Monken in the last couple of years, but having Mike Bobo in now and a new starting quarterback, I think it's very beneficial for Carson Beck. Speaking to what you just said about that and reading the keys is having Carson Beck know the system and being a fourth year player. I think that's really big when you think about visiting a team like Tennessee here in what November 11th, I think it is. So I think it's really good for Georgia also to have them kind of middle of the schedule there to kind of get things worked out and feel more comfortable with each other headed into that game. So I feel like continuity would be a big thing in those environments, when you have to work on the silence, right?
Mm-hmm. Most definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, so I really like that it's in the middle of the schedule now. I think Georgia fans should feel comfortable. They always want to come out and attack people, though. That's the first thing I was reading my social replies after that slow start versus UT Martin. Oh, Bobo, F Bobo, F Carson Beck. And I was like, guys, this is a new offense. You had two starting receivers out. You had a starting running back out. It's give them some time here. I said there was going to be growing pains. I feel like we've been talking about it all season on the show, the growing pains that could come with it, right? But I mean, this beginning of the season to the middle of the season is so much different, right? I mean, how big do you think the growth is there for you guys? Speaking back to your career, beginning of the season, maybe first game to that middle game when you were in the middle of the SEC schedule, got a few wins on your belt.
Yeah, so from the beginning of the game, you're nervous, you're hitting somebody else because we just went to camp and hate each other. So you're nervous. It's the first game. And then as you start to play, as you start to practice, as you know who you're playing against, know who you're playing with, getting on the same page with the quarterback, everything just starts to flow. But during that first game, second game, third game, you're always getting kinks out. And then you start warming up and being like, oh, okay, this is what we've been doing. It's no difference. All right, let's go play.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I love it, man. That's good stuff. Georgia, we got Ball State this week, and just for the sake of doing it, and I'm gonna fact check you on this. We'll see how you do. I'm just kidding. I don't want to put you on the spot. Ball State, Georgia here in Athens. Another tune-up game for Georgia. Headed into South Carolina the following week, and that's going to be at home too. Give me a little score prediction. Ball State, they played Kentucky pretty tough last week. I mean, they ended up getting beat by pretty good, but I mean, they were tough in the first half and headed into that third quarter. Man, what do you see from Ball State this week? They think they score first. Then what's that? What's that score prediction for you?
45-10.
45-10. All right, 10 points. 10 points
Mm-hmm.
to that Georgia defense. All right. Do you think that's in garbage time? Do you think they do that early?
Garbage time.
Garbage time only. Yeah, I'm with you, man. That defense was flying around. I don't know if you got the chance to watch Georgia on Saturday. The way they were flying around on defense is just a testament to that same defense. Me and Artie were talking about it last week on that live show. It was like you almost enter these seasons not even worrying about Georgia's defense anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're going to reload and they're going to keep it up. And so the offense is really kind of the highlight and what everybody's looking at because that's the only change and the only thing that might lead to some doubts here at the end of the season, man. But hey, it's been great to have you on, Orson, and hopefully we'll get you on here soon again. Love to talk to. Maybe we'll get you on with Artie and y'all can talk more about these stories, man. I love getting y'all guys together.
I would love that. I would love that. And thank you for having me on. It was fun.
Thanks, buddy. Yeah, guys. So check us out, the Pool Sports Network. Also, UJ Football Live on Twitter, Instagram, UJ Wire USA Today Sports. It's where you can find our content as well. We have a live show. Make sure to tune in for that Thursdays at 8 p.m. With Arthur Lynch, and we're going to talk more about this pregame for Ball State and just our feelings on the season as a whole. A lot of good games this past weekend. We'll dive into those a little bit on Thursday. Orson, go Dogs, man. We appreciate you.
Thank you. Go Dogs.